All right. Good evening, and welcome to our program, Celebrating Middle Eastern Cultures, Myth versus Reality. I am Christy Christofferson, a librarian at Hillsboro Public Library. This program is part of our We Are Hillsboro series, celebrating our diverse cultures and community. Our host will be presenting the program. Please save your questions for the end of the presentation. We look forward to a robust Q&A session. If you're not sure where the Q&A portion is, if you hover at the bottom, there should be a Q&A, and just click on that and you can type in any questions that you have. I also have a chat available if you have questions for me during the presentation. So go ahead and go there if you would like. All right. Myths about the Middle East permeate American culture. Tonight, we will learn the truth from journalist Naskah Zada as she shares facts gleaned from experts and experiences of those affected by the culture, religion, and political conflicts of the region. Our presenter tonight is the host of the executive producer of The Zada Show, a TV presentation featuring Middle East experts, as well as voices of ordinary people affected by the culture, religion, and political conflict of the region. The show is meant to include everyone, Muslim, Christian, and Jews, for an honest and in-depth discussion. She is a writer, commentator, blogger, journalist, and radio and TV producer. Over the years, she has had the privilege of interviewing high government officials, academics, and international figures around the world. Growing up in Iraq during the Iraq-Iran War and the Gulf Wars, Naskah is no stranger to covering conflicts in the Middle East. She's a graduate of Portland State University and has a Master's of Arts degree in Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution. Now I turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for this kind introduction. I'm Naskah Zada. I'm really honored to be here. I love my community in Portland, Oregon, and I've been living here for about over a year. And I'm really honored to have this opportunity to talk to you about some of myth and realities when it comes to the Middle East. And as we noticed, there are a lot of people, not a lot, but some people from the region, Middle East, living in our community. So it's good to get some education about that topic. You might want to ask why Naskah Zada, to present this topic. And I just want to give brief description why I chose to give presentations about Middle East and myth and realities, and why I started my own web TV show that deals with very similar topics. Many years ago, like about maybe 12, 15 years ago, when I started journalism in Washington, D.C., I started as a radio producer and presenter. I did not want it to be related to my background, which is the Middle East, culture, religion, and being Muslim woman in the United States. So in being in Washington, D.C., I was asked lots of questions regarding, do you ride camels? Where are you from? If I have ever seen snow, since I'm from desert, and that region that it's stereotypes in the West known as it's a desert and everybody owns camel, or some other myth that we're gonna get into details. So those questions that made me think about reporting more about the region, instead of I was interested, like I said, on reporting anything else. I was interested in reporting on Cuba and U.S. relations with Cuba or Venezuela or European Union, compared the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, Muslim, Middle Eastern countries and background. But since I was presented with those questions, I decided to study more on those questions and research more, and also travel to the region for work related to media relations to the region. And I got really interested in that, and I felt responsible to educate people, but because I feel we all have stereotypes, and I'm not saying just Americans having stereotypes, and it's a bad thing. As humans, I feel like we should be fair, and if I am fair from traveling and living in the United States, and also travel to Europe, and also travel to the Middle East, that we have certain stereotypes that we need to debunk or just talk about it if it's true or not. So when it comes to the Middle East, there are a lot of them. Some of them might be slightly true, but I would like to get into that. So I'm going to share the screen. Hopefully I'm going to do it right this time. Then go to slideshow. Oops. Is this good now, Christy? Okay.
Yes,
So this, okay. So this is actually just the theme, the opening of the Zada show, which, as you can see, has some pictures of camels and also desert and Middle East. But to me, when it comes to the Middle East, there are misconception. Like I said, it's about like if I used to own a camel, or if I used to live in desert, or if I used to beaten up by my male family members because I'm a female, and all of that. So I want to go to the next slide, show that shows some pictures. I try to be visual and the presentation. So this is my hometown. When people ask me that, actually recently a good friend of mine asked me about winters coming in Portland, Oregon, that's Pacific Northwest, as we know, that's for the international audience. This is my hometown that looks a lot more like Portland, Oregon, and the mountains we have around the area. They asked me if I ever seen snow, and I was just like in shock. I'm like, yes, I have, and I need to find some pictures from my hometown. This is where I was born. I did not live there my entire life. Obviously, I lived in different places. I cannot show every picture where I lived, but this is where I was born, grew up until I was 13. So this is my hometown. So the first myth when it comes to like the Middle East, if it's all desert, obviously is not true. But my favorite one, it's coming from, I don't know if it's coming from movies and all that. I call them the three big B's, BS. I apologize, Hillsboro Public Library, but I call them Middle Easterners, either like stereotyped or the myth about them. They are either bombers, billionaires from the Gulf countries owning oil companies, or belly dancers. That's a gorgeous belly dancer. And nothing wrong with that dancing, belly dancing. I mean, we are not here to say that like some people from the Middle East, they don't do belly dancing, but it's not everybody. Like personally, myself, I don't belly dance that well, maybe. Also, one of the important myths is about being all Middle Eastern people are terrorists. That's completely, we're going to go into details when we talk about the media. And then our first myth is all Middle Eastern people are Arabs, which is not true. We have Middle East, obviously, like I said, divided to the Middle East, like Turkey, Syria, and those countries. They are really mixed with diverse people. You have Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries, majority of them, except for Iran, that they are Arabs. And then you have Turkey, Syria, Iraq, that they have really diversity, which all of them, they have Kurdish people, they are not Arabs. They're from Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, Kurdish people. And then you have Afghanistan, mixture of non-Arab people and also Arab people in there. Obviously, Turkey, they're Turkish, they're not Arabs, but they're Muslims, majority of them Muslims. So that's where that misconception come from. The second one, it's if all Middle Easterner people are Muslim. And that's another myth, because not everybody in the Middle East are Muslim. I mean, they can be different, depends on the ethnicity, religion, national identity, and they are obviously Israel. We have Jewish people in Israel, and in Iran we have Muslims, and there's our Baha'is that they are completely consider themselves as separate from Islam. And then we have Christians. We have Christians, Assyrian Christians, mostly in Iraq, and some in Iran too, according to some research I've done recently. And also we have Egypt, Coptic Christians, as we can see sometimes on the mainstream media. And we also have, I'm going to show you a picture of, this is a picture in Lebanon, a picture of a mosque, as we can see, and also a mosque and a church next to each other. And that's something not uncommon when it comes to the region. You see that a lot, and it's not completely, all the churches destroyed in the Middle East. That's according to the mainstream media. So this is one of like the pictures. A lot of people, when they go to Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, you see those pictures a lot. And obviously the mainstream media, they really never show those pictures. And also our number 3 myth that we want to talk about, most Muslims are Arabs who live in the Middle East. And that's not true either completely. Obviously, a lot of Arabs, they are Muslims, but we have, Arabs, they live in Lebanon, like we say, certain other areas in the region, they are not Muslims. But there are 1 billion Muslims around the globe. That's a lot of Muslims. About 1/5 are Arabs. And also I wanted to ask a question. Obviously, this is not a live show that we can do Q&A and ask questions during the presentation. It's very unfortunate. But I wanted to ask which country has more Muslims than any other country, and that's Indonesia. Obviously, it's not an Arab country, and it has 200 million Muslims in that country. And I want to talk about US has about 5 million Muslims. And also, I want to ask a question, and we can answer it after I'm done with this, but I just want you to think about that. I want to ask if do you think Muslims have strange religion and worship a God completely different from other gods called Allah? I want to know at the end of the presentation, what do you think? If I forget about that question, please remind me so we can answer it together. So this is a couple from Indonesia, actually. So they study Quran. Obviously, they are not Arabs, but they are Muslim. My favorite myth is, I get asked all the time when I was doing, when I was journalist in DC and traveling. Also, people would ask me, even in Oregon, people ask me if the Middle East is all desert. Obviously, I love desert, but I have not lived in desert. You saw my hometown. Middle East is very diverse when it comes to landscapes and climate. This is some of the pictures I have for you, different countries in the region in the Middle East. But before that, I want to ask about how they, and I've been asked if I have a camel. I love horseback riding, and I'm like, I wish I knew, or I was growing up around camels too. That would be lovely. Or if I've seen, like I said, snow, and some of that, 2 of the pictures actually close to where I was growing up. So the facts about geography, as we can see, there are the region, again, great variety. It's very diverse, like I said, when it comes to climate and weather. There are desert areas and rainfall, and we have, there's there's a Mediterranean Sea and rivers and oceans and snow and all of that good stuff, that it's not just what we think it's desert. Myth number 5, I want to talk about: most Middle Eastern women wear hijab, cover their faces, as we can see in some of the pictures up there, and are treated very badly. When it comes to women, I feel like the most misunderstood myth about the region, women, because still somehow women in that region been mysterious to the West, or they've been either treated as victim, or somebody like me, when I grew up all my life, I was not supposed, like, I didn't wear hijab. But only when I moved to this country, people approach me, especially Americans. They ask me, why am I not wearing hijab? Am I going to get killed by my family members, or they beat me to death? And none of that, from my experience. I can only speak from my experience and some of other experiences. And I also want to mention that this presentation is not about comparing. You have to know Middle Eastern people like any other people from anywhere else, like this country, America. And we are not comparing, but if we are fair, we have to say they're humans too. They do have domestic violence. They have a lot of other political conflicts and issues that I'm not saying domestic violence does not exist. That's another topic for another presentation. But I would like to also mention, to be fair, that I have known a lot of women from the region growing up. Being mistreated was not something very common, like it's known as a stereotype and myth in the West. So that's something we need to talk about. And then this is some of the pictures of Middle Eastern women. And you also, I want to say that some Middle Eastern women, when they are Muslim, they choose to cover. Some of them, like I said, they might be forced to cover. Again, that topic is beyond the scope of this presentation. And if we are interested in more details about women in the Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, I would love to have more detailed presentation, I think, just about that, which I feel like it's well-deserved topic. If people interested, just say something in the comment, that so we can know that something we might be able to like talk about it, because I've done some research, a lot of research on that. So that the Middle Eastern women, as we say, they wear a different style of dress, covering, not covering, depends. Some people, you go to the Middle East, they're just dressed like me. Some people, they completely cover. Some people, they're like I said, burqa, niqab, hijab, depends what kind of cover they do, and if they're from Afghanistan, or they're from Saudi Arabia, or they're from Iran. And also, I want to say that even in a country like Pakistan, is very well known that in the West, that it's not a developed country, and it's really not looked at, especially after September 11. It's that country been really misrepresented a lot. That they had their female prime minister, that some Western countries that struggle to have that. Again, I'm not comparing, because comparing, in my opinion, is really unfair to any country, either to Pakistan or the United States. And it just, we have to present some facts about that region, just to be fair. Myth number 6, obviously, I feel like the father of starting that myth is Osama bin Laden, as we can see most of his pictures. And that September 11 started a lot of, well, all of that myth that all Muslims are terrorists. And I want to connect that to Hollywood. And just from my research, and since last year, I've been really, really interested in researching about Hollywood Middle Easterners and why there is this misrepresentation. and promoting that myth about Muslims, they're all terrorists, because Middle Easterners never get a chance in Hollywood to be really anything but terrorists, especially recently, or being obviously exotic belly dancer, as we were showing. This is some of the pictures actually of some of them real Arab stars that they did movies in the Hollywood. But the biggest problem, misunderstanding, like I said, Hollywood is promoting most of those shows and movies and only showing like the beginning of every movie or show. There's this 30 seconds that it's very important that um, to start the show. And as a producer, obviously I've done a lot of television. The beginning of the movie, it's always somebody saying Allahu Akbar, and then there's explosion or there's a belly dancer, and that's how those shows normally present the region. So no wonder the stereotypes, it's more and more deeper in the West, and especially United States, because of the Hollywood. And that's something need to be talked about. I want to talk about that's the recent one of the pictures, and there some of them old movies. Obviously, there's always a belly dancer. The newest. Oh, I want to talk about it before I go there. Oops. Sorry, I want to talk about some of the shows like Black Hawk Down, Delta Force, The Kingdom, Zero Dark 30. All of these movies, if you have watched them, they are really, really good at promoting those myths and stereotypes. I want to talk about a show a lot of people watch, at least in my awareness. It's The Homeland. I don't know if you guys watch that show. Please comment. I wish I could see your comments if you actually watching that show, if you have seen that show. I had a picture about that show somewhere, but I want to talk about that show a little bit, then we're going to go to our last part of the presentation, so I can talk to you and see what you think about that. The TV show Homeland shows streets of every Middle Eastern country. If you've seen that show, it's always the same. It's always full of armed men, women everywhere wearing burqas covered. There's this fear in their eyes. Men wearing traditional clothes. We can see in some of those historical movies like Aladdin or other movies that in reality, majority of Middle Eastern men don't wear that kind of style. But in Homeland, obviously, it's really it's showing this way, and it's also, it feels like it's lockdown or something about to happen, explosion or something of that sort. The other side, either it's they showing like the Gulf countries, hot women, fancy cars and oil, and maybe Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, and those countries in Gulf countries, they're like really rich with oil. Again, this presentation, nothing wrong, but those countries, obviously, they're serving different purpose in the Middle East. We're not here to say that they're doing anything bad. This presentation is not about that, but it's the black and white representation of the region that is troubling. And it's not always black or white as any other societies, countries. There are many other stuff going on when it comes to the Middle East. So that other side of the Gulf country, kind of, it's showing, it doesn't say Gulf, it's like, it seems like Vegas, and there's no middle ground, like I said, when it comes to that. All of that, why is it important to talk about myths about the Middle East? Obviously, some of them, like I said, some people wear hijab. Some people dress certain way, that some people belly dance, but not majority. Why is it important to talk about that? I feel like all of those myths we talk about, and this is just a really short time, and I'm running out of time. I'm trying to make it the closing really short. It's important that to know a lot of those myths, especially in the West, they led to Islamophobia. And Islamophobia is a very important topic. We can never talk about it in this short presentation, because Islamophobia meaning fear of Islam, or people seem to be as Muslims or Middle Easterners. So that's something occurred, like I was more highlighted after travel/Muslim ban, when Trump administration announced that people from certain countries, majority Muslim countries, cannot be allowed to this country. It was Islamophobia created, and lots of people like faced in the United States, in the Western, in the European countries, faced a lot of hate crimes, hate in general against them. So that's why it's important to talk about myth and stereotypes, so we can humanize people from the Middle East. Because at the end of the day, I grew up there until I was 23, and I'm not gonna tell you guys my age. No, I'm just kidding. But joking aside, when it comes to that, it's important to talk about topics like Islamophobia, because it's affecting communities. It's affecting our small communities. It's affecting this country as a United States, that home of immigrants. So I feel like this is important to talk about. That will conclude the presentation, but I just want to let you know that the same topic will be presented at PSU Naskah program. That's a part of like a new program at PSU. They it's Middle Eastern Initiative. Naskah, Naskah is for Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. And it's online event, and I'm gonna post it on my social media and their social media. Hopefully you're gonna be able to watch it and join us on that event too. So, and also I would love for you to be in touch with me and suggest any ideas for me. I feel like as a person from the Middle East, and also as a person from the United States, that I love this country. I feel like I have responsibility to educate what I know and what research says, and what people from the region says, and also what people from this country that they hear and would like to be educated. So I would love for you to follow me on social media, so we can help each other, educate each other, and be part of so small community and also global community. Thank you. And I am gonna take this away. Oops.
All right. If anyone would like to put something in the Q&A, you can also put it in the chat too. Also, if you want to ask a question out loud, I think you can raise your hand and I can click on your name and you can ask a question out loud too.
I want to talk about how, I think I asked a question about how Allah, an Arabic word. I just want to mention that Allahu Akbar does not mean explosions and all of that. The word Allah, it's really just Arabic word for God. That's translation. That's what it means. But Islamist terrorists, obviously, they use it for their advantage. That's again, that's beyond the scope of this presentation. We can talk about it another time, but we're not talking about that. I saw some stuff in the chat. I don't know if there's somebody say, I've seen the show Homeland. That's good. I've seen it too sometimes.
Oh, there's a question in the Q&A. Are different head coverings for women based on different religions?
So I'm not going to get into details. Obviously, if you are very religious and Christian in that region, and Christianity has covering too, but in Islam, which I'm more familiar and studied that, there are different, I'm trying to find the picture. I think I just logged out of the presentation. Yes, and it's something I feel like it deserves more showing and presenting. For example, the burqa, it's in Afghanistan and some part of Pakistan, which is completely covering your face. And then you have abaya, which is very, very popular in Iran. It's just a piece of cloth that you cover yourself. It's sometimes very thin. It doesn't have to be thick like burqa. So that just the style of woman covering, it's really deep research that, I mean, if you guys interested, I would love to talk about that because it's really very interesting.
Donald has a question in the chat. Do you want to read it?
You can read it.
I can read it? Okay. It says, thank you, Hillsboro Library and Naskah Zada. A question that is maybe difficult for being too vague, but in your research and experience and thoughts on the balance between cause and effect regarding these myths, Islamophobia relative to pre and post 9/11 may be an example. Any thoughts on that?
We talked about, so the causing, like, if I'm understanding correctly, hopefully I'm getting that question correctly. So getting the cause of, like, as we mentioned, for example, September 11, one of the causes that making more myth about the Middle East before September 11. So before September 11, as I remember correctly, when I was saying I was from the Middle East, I was this exotic dancer in the face of like people. They're like, oh, so I was not tourist. But now, even if I'm not covered after September 11, when I say, actually Saturday I got together in Oregon in lockdown with some friends. And then some of my American friends, they joked about, they're like, so Osama bin Laden was your neighbor? I'm like, yeah, my neighbor, Osama bin Laden. So I know this is joking, but it's really, obviously, it tells you that it's the effect of September 11. And then you also have, obviously, the homeland. You expect every female in that region to be scared and running away from their families. And that's not the fact either. And there are some females, obviously, they wish to run away. They're, they have difficult situations. So yes, Donald, did I answer your question?
Can you talk a little bit about what is going on in the movie industry or television shows there? Because I think it would be nice to see maybe more movies from the Middle East that, about real life and things like that, besides the Hollywood movies that are out there. Do you know much about what's happening?
And
in like the movie industry there, is there very strong?
So movie industry depends which country.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Iraq and Syria, they're not strong right now. Egypt has the strongest movies and all of that. And if you speak Arabic, normally you get accustomed to those Egyptian movies. Like I grew up watching Egyptian movies, and also not Egyptians, Indians, since they kind of fall into that. So Bollywood movies very, very popular, obviously, and then Egyptians, and then Lebanese, and then it used to be Syrian, but Syrian civil war, they're not developing in that area when it comes to that. And I think maybe Turkey is falling third when it comes to that. And that's a really, really interesting topic that need to be talked about, because I was talking to some people that they movie producers in Egypt and Lebanon and Turkey. They were saying how they feel like their movie is not presented when it comes to award shows in the West because of political situations, what's going on. It's especially the Egyptians and Lebanese felt this way. So it's something I think that's going to be my next research. I would love to get into details if it's myth or anything to do with that. And there's this myth that it got to do with Israeli Palestinian conflict too. But we don't want to get into that. That's a really complicated conflict. I feel like if we solve that conflict, there won't be a lot of issues in the region. But this presentation is not about that. I also want to ask or talk about some other points that I had. I just didn't want to keep talking if people don't have questions. If if Muslims that most Muslims dislike Jewish and they are anti-Semitic. So that's something traveling in the region and asking questions, I feel like people were telling me that they hate policies more than people. So it's not about Jewish people necessarily, because lots of, especially if you're the Arabs in the Middle East, they have, well, even if Pakistan, Afghanistan, it's very divided because Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they take sides and they feel like the West, especially United States, that unfairly taking Israeli side. And that's political, like I said, it's really deep. But talking, my purpose for this presentation is people, not politics. And if I'm fair to people, they've been saying that how they don't hate, in particular, like Jewish or Israeli people, they hate policies. And they also really, really dislike policies because if we like it or not, the United States is really heavily involved in the Middle East and that region. So that will create some kind of like conflict and people hating policies and not. But I also want to mention that I think I don't know why I skipped that people, when I put there, people, they don't hate Americans at all. They think it's so cool to speak English when you travel to the region. If my American friends, they always treat it so bad, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys, because they love Americans, they love to learn, they think it's very exotic country, and it's they love the freedom about this country, obviously. So they absolutely do not hate Americans. There are people, obviously extremists, that they create that tension, but majority of people, it's so cool to speak English, it's so cool. They were telling me how they also have stereotypes, how they watch movies, that's all they know, Americans, they don't know anything else. They're telling me, they're like, oh, I love it when you guys order pizza, it's so cool the way you guys eat pizza. Or New York City, I'm scared to go because it's so dangerous, I'm gonna get killed. Or they have those stereotypes, and I would love to have a presentation about that, because it's so amazing how their stereotypes, it's completely untrue. It's mostly based on Hollywood movies that I found very interesting. I'm like, they're like, you've been to New York City? I'm like, yep. They're like, oh, and you're alive? You're okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So stereotypes, like I said, it's not, I don't want to, we don't want to dehumanize, like, oh, Americans. I was talking to a student the other day at PSU. She's like, oh, Americans so dumb. And I'm like, I really don't like to use that word. It's just, we all have stereotypes, but we need to talk about them. It's not, if you don't know, don't know. And if you watched Aladdin movies and you think everybody is, that's how they look like and that's how it is, and you don't know, nothing wrong with that. Doesn't make you a dumb or not smart person. It's just, we need to talk about it and say, hey, they're humans, we're humans, we have a lot in common than we think.
Cindy mentioned that she would love to have you do a presentation about women in various countries in the Middle East at some point. So that was an interest to her.
Yeah, I would love that.
Well, I have a question. I would love to travel over there. Do you have like places, because it is a very diverse and large region, do you have places that you would recommend to go visit where someone that could be enlightened about all the different cultures and peoples and everything that you've talked about tonight, is there any area that you would recommend? Maybe
You know, so it depends where you go, obviously. My COVID and terrorism and all of that, nobody can recommend anything. But I was just hearing from my Egyptian friend that traveling in Egypt, it's becoming more and more like, it's really safe and people start traveling there. If it was not for COVID, it's complicated just because what's going on. I myself like traveled a lot to Turkey, northern Iraq, and it was super safe and really nice. It's it's very diverse. I feel like it's kind of like Amsterdam. I don't know if you've been there. Not smoking marijuana, but very diverse, and people trying to bring Westerners and welcome them just to debunk those stereotypes. I feel like they like, oh, everybody else like. I have never been to Afghanistan or Pakistan that I could recommend. I would love to go there if you want to go. I was supposed to go there on rock climbing with some friends, but COVID happens. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, anyone else out there have some questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, and one more before someone else asks, or they can, I don't know if they can put it there, raise their hands.
Yeah, if they raise their hands, I can let them talk, I believe, if they want to raise their
Okay. I want to talk about actually two things, and then you can wrap it up. I think it's getting almost an hour. It's if you are if we talk about Muslims, like we said, not all Middle Easterners Muslims, but if you're Muslim and if you know a bit about Quran and Holy Book of Quran, that you know that if you're Muslim, you have to believe in the other holy books like Bible and Old Testimony and all of that. It's in Quran, it's written, but everybody ignoring that just because if we pay attention to that for some reason, I think it's going to bring us closer. So that's another thing. And also, not every person or Muslim or Middle Easterners believe in holy war, which is called jihad. It's really complicated. And again, terrorists use it for their advantage. Doesn't mean it cannot be changed. And people really over there frustrated with their civil wars, with their global wars, with their like a lot of regions like you have Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, they always have civil wars going on besides like other wars going on. And then you have Iran, it's very special, but so we need to talk about that at one point.
Well, wonderful. Well, if there's not any more questions from anyone, it's your last chance to ask. I really appreciate you coming and talking with us. It's very interesting, and it's interesting. There's stereotypes on both sides, and I think it's great to get to know more about your culture. It's been really interesting. Thank you so much. So we will be recording this and posting it on YouTube in a few days. We'll put that out on social media. So if you want to share this with someone that you know that didn't get to come tonight, that would be great. And please check out her links and all of that. We will have that on when we post things again, and check out more because her show is really interesting. I've watched the Zada show, and it was really interesting, and you get some really great people on there. So get a little plug for you. And hopefully things will get back to normal soon, hopefully, and you'll be back in the studio before long.
Yes, if we survive tonight, our first, what is not even first in Oregon, our lockdown. It's not lockdown. It'll be okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And if you want to know more, like I said, just follow social media or subscribe or just get in touch with me, email me, or I'm really responsive when it comes to that. I just want to educate and help as much as possible.
Great. Thank you. Well, good night, everyone. Have a great evening.